Hi, everybody. How are you all doing today? And thank you very much for joining me for another lesson video. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about what are supports, what are resistances, what are channels, and what are trend lines for lesson number 10. I really hope that you guys have taken a lot away from these videos so far. I've certainly put in a lot of effort into them because I ultimately want to see you guys succeed. There's no greater joy, to be quite honest, than seeing other people learn from the material that you've learned already. And because I've made so many mistakes in the past, I really hope that I can add to your repertoire of knowledge that you guys actually have already. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, guys, I really truly do want to see you guys succeed. I think in a few years from now, when a lot of you guys will absolutely be successful in trading, we're going to look back on this, guys, and I really hope that you remember me. And I really do hope that we can keep in contact, especially if you guys are incredibly successful and you didn't give up. Just always remember that staying in the game is one of the most important things that we can remember about trading. A lot of weak hands, guys, get shaken out, right? And we always hear of people talking about weak hands. So what are weak hands, right? It's people who don't know how to stay in the game, could be to be quite honest, right? They end up selling when it comes to really oversold conditions already. And when they sell in really oversold conditions, it basically shakes out the weak hands and it transfers assets from one person to another person. We have to remember that, like all coins, right, guys? It's a very finite resource. And because it's a very finite resource, like for example, Bitcoin, right? It's not like it's an unlimited supply and anybody can buy it anytime. There is not an unlimited supply. With Bitcoin, there's always going to be a demand for it. But as the price goes up, right, the supply is going to become very much so less, and you guys will have a much harder time accumulating in the quantities that you want. So the last thing you want to do is get shaken out in the game. Make sure that you guys stay strong. You got to make sure you stay strong like a bull, because if you don't, guys, you will be shaken out and you will give up. And unfortunately, you might end up quitting altogether. So please, guys, always remember that the lessons are the most valuable lessons. They come from losing. So if you guys are losing some of your trades, please don't be discouraged. Knowing that losing, it's definitely going to build character. And as you lose more, you're going to have much more experience under your belt as well. I'm just going to lower the camera here a little bit. So make sure you guys try your best to actually stay in the game. It's a little bit too low. Sorry about that, guys. Make sure you know how to stay in the game, guys, right? It builds character truly when you do lose. I wouldn't have this type of experience that I have right now unless I've put in tons of time, especially when it comes to re-evaluating my circumstance when I win. Every time I win, guys, I go over the trade, believe it or not. I go over every single time when I win. I want to focus on what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and especially those losses, guys. You can never ever win all the time and become a better trader, right? If you kept winning all the time, just like in real life, guys, how do you actually succeed, right? Your losses, they mold who you are. Trading is all about personality and controlling those emotions and making sure that you have a winning mindset. If you have a winning mentality, and you truly understand that your losses, guys, it's going to build perseverance. It's going to build character. It's going to show strength. It's going to mold your character. It's going to turn you into the trader that I know you guys will become. You just have to be very patient. You just have to give it time. You got to go through these motions. You got to go through these steps of losing. You got to go through these steps of winning, right? So please don't ever be discouraged if you guys are losing a lot. If you are losing a lot, make sure you guys are reaching out to me, right? I am your teacher, you can say, right? You guys are my students. And because we have this synergy with each other, and because we do have this relationship of student and teacher status now, make sure you guys are reaching out to me on Udemy with questions so we can go over some of the things that you guys can actually improve as well. Because ultimately, I want you guys to be successful in trading, and I want you guys to understand that I need you to be successful in terms of making sure that you know the steps needed to succeed. And the steps needed to succeed is going through the motions of learning all of these materials from top to bottom, from lesson 1 to 17, and then rinse and repeating it. Always review every single day. What I do at the beginning of every day is I review last night what happened, and I go through literally every single one of my plays. I'm always keeping a piece of paper with me, guys, where I'm writing things down, right? I'm writing things down to take notes to see where I could actually improve. And I know that for a fact that there's a lot of areas of improvement that I could work on as well. And at the end of the night, guys, I actually review all of my plays again as well. I make sure I review what I've done wrong so I can improve it the next day, and to make sure that I actually don't repeat it as well. So we've covered a lot of things already, guys. We've covered so much material, and I'm really proud of you guys for actually coming this far. So please don't take that patronizingly. Please don't take that condescendingly when I say that I'm proud of you guys. You guys should be proud of yourselves. You guys should pat yourselves on the back. Every time I know I'm doing a good job, I feel very proud of myself, right? So this proudness, it comes from this innate ability to realize that I could always improve. And it also comes with trying to build that self-confidence, trying to build that self-esteem when it comes to trading. If you guys have more confidence when it comes to trading, there is no doubt that you are going to be on your way to becoming a much better trader. So please, guys, make sure, guys, once again, your losses, guys, it's going to make you such a better trader, okay? But make sure you also realize that losses, they don't need to come at a very expensive price, right? These invaluable lessons can come at a very minor cost. So please make sure as well that you're not playing your entire bankroll. Know that this is gambling, no matter what you guys say, okay? No matter what you say, it's 100% gambling. So make sure you understand that whatever money that you are putting into crypto, there's a possibility that you could potentially lose every single penny as well, right? So only play what you're comfortable to play, and make sure that you guys are playing for the valuable lessons that are coming rather than only playing to make profit. Remember that we don't try to play to make money, right, guys? We don't trade for money. What we trade for are good, valuable lessons and to make good trades. If you focus on making good trades, there's no doubt in my mind that the money will come down the road. A lot of my friends, they believe that they should play way more money so they can win more money. And then when they actually lose, you know what they do? They actually spend more money and they play bigger. They say, okay, go big or go home. I've lost a lot already. No, guys, I used to be in that mentality as well, where I would think I've lost a lot. I got to play way more so I can win it all back. But that's not the way that you actually trade. Make sure that you guys are focusing on good trades, because good trades, the big bonus will come with the money down the road. So, guys, once again, thank you very much for all the support that you guys have given me. I'm very appreciative that you guys are in this class with me, because it certainly helps me out definitely a lot as well. And let's actually start lesson number 10, and I'm very happy to have you guys here. We're going to talk about what supports are, what resistances are, what are channels, what are trend lines, and we're also going to brush very lightly on oh, you guys don't even see this, okay? We're going to talk about all of this for lesson number 10, and we're also going to get into some of the small patterns that we'll talk about, okay? And we're also going to start talking about breakouts as well. Breakouts are definitely one of the key strategies that I personally use, where I make a fortune on it, right? Not a fortune, but it's definitely one of my repertoires. Think of it like this, guys, okay? Think of it like you have a lot of weapons, okay? Trading is having a lot of skills and weapons up your sleeves, and you want to build up this repertoire of weapons that you can use. And some weapons are actually better used at different times, or some skills are better to use in different situations. But once you build up these bunch of weapons and skills that you have, you will know which one to use and which one will actually be better in some circumstances, right? And supports, resistances, channels, and trend lines are absolutely one of the things that's going to mold you as a trader. So let's get into lesson number 10, and I'm really excited to start doing this lesson with you guys, and thank you very much for being here. So now we're really going to get into this right now. Okay, we're really going to
Yeah,
get
it looks
into
like they're going to
supports and
buy.
resistances.
It certainly looks
The
like it's about to
best way
spike up here
to
soon.
think of
There's
a
really no
resistance
path for
is
it to
as
go
a
other
ceiling.
than up.
Okay,
Do you guys
as a
see this
ceiling
sign
like
right
that.
here?
Okay, guys,
There's actually a
where
lot
the
of
price
people
has a lot of
that
trouble
looks like it's about to
breaking
just go
through the
upwards,
ceiling.
right? So you guys
And
can
it
just
needs
see,
to smash
excuse me,
through
the natural
that
progression
ceiling
of
in
how
order
this
to
is
get
most
to a newer
likely just
high.
going to spike
And the
up
best
as
way to
well.
think of
It's
a
just a matter of
support
being very
is
patient,
as a
guys,
floor,
honestly.
right?
Very, very
There's a
patient. Okay?
floor
It's just waiting
right here,
to see how
and
this
the
goes
price
right now.
can
So let's
simply
see
not go lower
how
than
much
it.
higher this
So
can
we're
actually go.
always
I
wondering,
wish I got it around the
where's the
209
ceiling?
ranges. If I
Where's
got a
the
209 range,
resistance?
I'd be up
Where's
like
the
$500
point where
right
it's
now.
going to have a
Pretty
lot
nice
of
little
trouble
profit.
breaking through the ceiling, or it's actually not going to break it at all,
No,
right?
people are still
Is
selling.
it going to hit this ceiling?
People
Will we
are
actually
still
be able
selling.
to smash through it? And
Interesting,
then when
right?
it comes, that's when we're
Some
going
people are testing
upwards.
the waters,
And then when
right?
we're going
This guy's
down,
putting up
we
quite a
ask
bit
ourselves,
at
well,
1470 something
where
right there,
is it
right?
very
He's got
likely to
5,600
find
there.
a
Now that's
floor,
actually quite a big
right?
order.
So
It's
where
actually
is it
very
likely to
discouraging
bounce
right now
off
for it to go
of?
upwards.
Now,
So we just
like
got to give it a
all
little bit more
ceilings,
time to see
they're
how this
meant
is
to
going
be
to go.
broken.
But once
That's
again,
the thing
I
about
entered
ceilings
it because,
and
guys,
resistances,
we reached
right?
the Fibonacci level.
Eventually,
so we spiked up
we're
there a
going to
little
get
bit. So
to
this should
a very
naturally
high
spike up
price,
a tiny bit
and
as
we're
well,
going to have
right?
no
I've got
precedent.
mine
We're going to
spaced
have
out
no
here. There's not
history
too
of
much
where a
resistance.
ceiling
He's
is.
only about
So if I were to zoom out
16,000 there. This guy's
really,
a
really
bigger
far
player,
right
right?
now,
He's the
and you
annoying one with
guys
5,000
are now
right
more
now.
familiar
So they've actually
with
got
what
to
we've been
chip
talking
away
about,
at the guy.
if I
with the
had
five,
to
oh, they
ask
actually
you guys
did.
right
They just
now,
literally
where
chipped it away.
is the
So now
resistance,
we're at
the major resistance, the
93.17,
highest
right?
resistance
Looks like it's
that we've
actually
ever
going to
had,
bounce a little bit.
right? Where
Right?
would you guys
We
say
are at a
is
fairly
the
decent
absolute
Fibonacci level
ceiling
right now.
right now,
So let's see,
looking
guys.
at this
Let's
chart,
see if
which
this
would
is going to
basically
bounce
be
upwards,
the
right?
highest
Let's go to
point
the 1 hour
on here?
and see. No, 1 hour, no signs yet. No signs
Yeah,
of reversal
if you guys
yet.
said right
Are we
here,
catching the
the
exact
all-time
bottom?
high,
Yes, we are
they
catching
use an
it, guys. We
analogy
are
called
catching the bottom right
all-time
there,
high,
okay? There's
also known
massive
as
signs of bullish
ATH. Let me
divergence
write it
that
down
looks
for you
like
guys,
it's
okay?
clean across the
ATH.
board right now.
A lot of
Looking
people will
pretty
say
darn good, in my
ATH,
personal opinion.
which stands
Now,
for
all we got to do is just
all-time
chip me
high.
away, okay?
I didn't
I'm the
even know what
guy
that
that they
meant,
need to
honestly,
chip
until like a
away
year
because
ago.
I'm
People
the
were always
one
saying like,
with
"What
a
is
$10,000
ATH?"
order there,
So
and
yeah,
also
don't feel
another
weird if you guys
$10,000
didn't know what
order
that
there.
meant, even if it
And
was
there we
obvious,
go.
okay?
We just
Because
started
I
to
honestly
chip away
didn't
a
even know
little
what
bit
that meant
more.
until a year ago.
Okay,
I always heard
I'm
people
gonna
say it, but
actually move mine
it's
to
quite obvious
15,
now, right?
two,
So the
just like
all-time
right
high
here. Okay, I
was
want to be the
clearly
next guy in
around
line
right here, 11,000,
that actually
or
ends
sorry,
up selling it. 15, I want us to go to 14
$19,891
for
was
this
the
one.
all-time high. But the thing
Actually,
about
15,
ceiling is,
15,
depending on where you're looking
10.
at it,
Say we'll
it's
say
going to
15,
have
10.
different levels of
Let's see if I
ceilings.
can
There could be
actually
one
get
up
mine
there,
in
there
there.
could be one
Sold,
here, there
right?
could be one here,
So
there
now
could be
there's
one
not too
here.
many people
There's
buying right
never
now, but
only
I do
one
believe
place
that
where
this is
you're
definitely
going
going
to
to trend
find one
upwards
specific
incredibly
resistance.
soon. Just in a
Resistances
few
can
more
be a
seconds.
range, right? It can be a range
Okay,
where
there's
there's
not
a
that many
lot
people
of price
buying.
action
Right
in
now,
this
this is the
specific
time where
area,
people, okay,
right?
there we go.
So
We just
if there's a
spiked up
lot
to
of price action in
93.20,
that
right?
specific
We
area,
spiked up to
it could be a really
93.20, so
hard
we should
ceiling
see
or
a small
resistance
spike
for us
here
to actually
very,
break,
very
okay?
soon as
Now, on the
well,
way
okay?
down, it goes for the same thing as well. If there's a lot of
These guys are
activity
the ones
on the
blocking
way
me, which I
down
really
that
don't
we can
like too
easily
much.
find from
There
the
we go.
past, right? We look at the
I did it, guys.
past
I just
and
made
we say, okay, where was there a
$278.
lot of activity
Hey, yo.
before? So if I were to
Pretty
ask
good,
you
right?
guys right
So how
now, I'm
long
going to
did
go to the
this
daily
trade
chart
take?
now, okay?
This trade
That was
actually
the all-time
took
high.
12 minutes
If I
for
had to ask you guys, right, this
$278.
generally
So let's go
the
over
lowest
this one more
possible
time,
support
why
right
I
now,
actually entered
where
this
would
trade.
you guys
I
say
entered
the
this
lowest
trade
possible
because
support
we
is?
hit the 0.618 Fibonacci
There's probably
number,
a few points,
okay?
right?
This is the
Would you guys say
618
this is one?
Fibonacci number according to
Would you say
Bitcoin
this is
right
one?
now, right? And
No,
also,
probably
I
not right
entered
now,
this
right?
trade
Probably
because
not right
I'm
now. That's
just-
probably
that's
not one.
honestly one of the
The
main
lowest
reasons
points are
why I
probably
entered.
here, right?
And also because the
And probably
15-minute
here as
chart,
well,
I
wouldn't
remember
you say?
checking it earlier.
Yeah,
we
definitely.
did start
Okay.
to
So
bullishly
these are probably some
diverge
points right
there,
there
right? That's a
that
very
we can
good
see
sign of a bullish
as the
divergence.
lowest
right
floor
here, okay?
where we're
And
at.
also on
Now,
the
this one
5-minute
here
chart
was
right here,
$6,000.
right? We're
If you
starting to
put your
bullishly
mouse
diverge as
on
well.
any
We
of
also double
these
bottom
candles,
there. So here we
you'll
go,
actually
guys. I'm
see
just
where it
going to
says
tweet
O,
this because people
H,
hate it
L,
when I
and
tweet my
C,
profits
right?
right here, okay?
O, H,
Just going to tweet my
L,
profits right
and
here in
C,
front of you
which
guys.
means open,
Actually,
high,
nah, I'll do it when I'm
low,
done. So
and
hope you guys
close.
enjoyed this lesson.
This one
See you
here
guys soon.
had a
Bye
low
now.
of 6,000, but over here the low was only $6,425. But you can generally say, and you can just highlight that this is definitely an area, right? It's a range where we have a support and resistance. So if we look at it on a daily chart, it will be much easier to identify where the all-time highs and the all-time lows for these particular sections are. But if you go to, for example, a 30-minute chart, right, because we're looking at it on a lower time frame, then the resistances and the supports could actually be extremely different as well. So do you guys think right now, if we look on a 30-minute chart, that the all-time high, right? Like I'm just gonna go over here, that the all-time high of 20, $20,000, do you guys think that it even matters right now in the grand, like if I go to a 4-hour chart, for example, okay? Let's go to a 4-hour chart. Do you guys think that right now on the 4-hour chart, the all-time high of $20,000 is any relevant at all? No, not really any relevant, right? So we have to make sure that it is relevant to where we are looking as well. So let's try to identify some major resistances right now. If I looked at it right now, where would you guys say the major resistance is? Okay, the major resistance is definitely one right there, right? Right around here. Certainly a really hard resistance that we simply cannot break, right? And then if we zoom out, we also see some more resistances right around the $11,700 range, right? That's the next high region. And perhaps we even see some over here, perhaps even here. Perhaps this whole range could be seen as a resistance as well, right? So resistances can come almost arbitrarily as well, depending on who's looking at it, on what time frame, and what the person is subjectively thinking that the resistance is. But sometimes it's not arbitrary and it's not subjective, right? Sometimes it's clear as water or clear as mud, whatever the saying is. And this all-time high of $20,000 is clearly a resistance right there, right? So sometimes it's not subjective, but sometimes if you're looking at it from a different time frame, it could be very much so resistive, depending on who's looking at it. So if you guys take a look at here, for example, would you say that this is a resistance area? Right around there? Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say so because we have, this major area and that major area. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot of resistance. Even resistance from right here, we can say, okay? We can even say this whole region is a lot of resistance because there's a lot of activity, right? Take a look. But if we look at from here, okay, if we look at it in just in this section right here, what we actually see relevant wise, right? That there's really not a lot of resistance from here to here because there's not really a lot of activity and data, right? So where would you guys say that a short-term support is right now, right? Let's look right here on this screen right now. Where would you guys say a bottom in the very short term could possibly be? Yeah, this right here, if you guys said right around there, right? Like 9,000-ish or 8,900, that's definitely an area. That's definitely an area as well. Okay, absolutely. So there's many ways that you can take resistances and supports. Okay, I want to explain to you guys the concept of a bull trap. Okay, a bull trap. The concept of a bull trap is when the price is going upwards, right? And people believe that the price is going to go up, but instead, when you buy into this position of yours, you actually end up getting trapped in there because the bulls, that's what you are, who went long, you buy into this position and you get trapped, right? And then the price actually ends up coming down instead, okay? Now, the concept is the same as a bear trap as well, right? Where people are led to believe, for example, in this region here, okay? Let's talk about a bull trap first. For example, right here, okay? Just take a look right here, guys. See how there's these wicks that go upwards like that, right? These wicks that go up, they are what I would call a bull trapped region. So what you have to make sure that you do, make sure that when you're actually going into a position like that, is you have to ensure that the price actually closes above it. Okay, that is the important thing. It's super important, guys, to understand this concept where you have to wait until the candle actually successfully closes above it with a lot of volume. And that's going to be covered in the moving average lesson. I think it's a few lessons from now because we're going to be talking about breakouts near there as well. Actually, it'll be covered a lot in the next video where we're going to be talking about breakouts for lesson 11. So if you guys notice here on a 2 hour candle, for example, okay, where is it again? Right here, we see a lot of wicks that poke above it, right? So this would be considered a bull trapped region above here where I'm going to highlight it, okay? Right above there. It's a bull trap region because some people might be led to believe that the price is going to go up, but they actually bought into it, like they bought into it. But instead of actually going up, the price ended up declining very, very heavily. So that region, you could definitely consider it a bull trap. Now, the same goes for around here, okay? Let's look at it on the downside right there as well, okay? Do you guys see these wicks? Usually wicks could imply that it's like a bull trapped region. So some people who actually ended up shorting the market or they ended up unloading their shares or their bitcoins because they believe that the price was actually going to decline, right? This is what we call a bear trap. So if you might have entered a short position or you decide to sell your Bitcoin, right? Or mainly short positions, we can say, right? If you're in a short position because you believed it was going down, but instead the price actually went upwards instead. So because the price actually went upwards instead, well, it would be very easy to believe that you are now bear trapped. So once again, a bull trap is a region where you believe that the price is going up, but instead of it going upwards, you're now trapped above a particular price territory, and the price ended up declining instead. And the same thing actually goes towards a bear trap, where you believe that it's time to short the market, but instead of shorting it there, or you did short it, the price actually ended up reversing on you very quickly. And that's a strategy that the bulls and the bears always use because there's like a tug of war that goes back and forth with each other, right? And with it going back and forth so often, their job is to try to take advantage of each other by trapping or tricking one another. You always have to remember the big battle of the bulls and the bears, right? The bulls, they want the price to go upwards, right? And they want the price to go upwards, but they want to trap the bears, right, in the bottom there. And then the bears, they want to let the bulls believe that the price is going to go up, but instead they start selling off. They start selling off and even more so they can buy back Bitcoin cheaper, or they could perhaps enter these short positions, right? So there's always a raging war between these two. That's why we're always seeing prices fluctuate up and down. So these supports and resistances are incredibly important to identify, especially with these bull trapped regions. Now, I'll give you guys a quick intro to what we're going to do in the next lesson video. Okay, the way that you do not get trapped. Honestly, I don't get trapped, guys. Like, I really don't get trapped, like, at all anymore. And the reason why I don't get trapped, which will be covered highly in the next video, is because I focus a lot on making sure I have something called confirmation, okay? Confirmation, what it does is it allows me to confirm with certainty that the price is actually going to break above it before I actually enter a position, right? So if we look at it on a lower time frame here, what we're seeing is a lot of wicks being poked up and then pushed down. A wick right here, if you look closer as well, right? This red candle, wick pushed up, came down. Wick pushed up, came down. And this one right here was basically enough of a candle for me to decide that the market is simply not strong enough at all to break through it. So we see a major wick get pushed up, right? Like $87 tried to get pushed up, but the market simply rejected it. So what you would want is after it breaks a resistance on a breakout, is to have the solid type of confirmation where it's going to go upwards, okay? Like to give you guys an example, this region right here, right? This yellow line is clearly a hard resistance, right? And this wick right there is a bull trapped region, right? So notice how there's two different levels of resistances here, right? There's this region here that I would call a no trade zone, right? A no trade zone right there. But once we actually break above it, right? We're actually now finally, this one broke above it, right? Now it's not enough of a confirmation for me to enter, but the next candle is actually pretty decent, okay? It's pretty decent because it now bounces off of the resistance. We always need to remember that what was previously a resistance actually becomes a support, okay? And what was previously a support becomes a resistance. Let me say that again just to make sure you guys understand. What was previously a resistance now becomes a support, and what was previously a support, it ends up becoming a resistance, right? So this candle right here, if you guys look at it very, very closely, if you look at it very closely, it actually broke above this resistance by the wick right here, right? See the wick? And then after it broke above it, it tried to push back down below it right here. But instead, what it ended up doing was it got rejected, right? And then the next candle is the dead giveaway because it was formerly the resistance. It makes a lot of sense now that it's trying to push down, but it couldn't. So then you would enter a trade. So as soon as it actually broke above this candle right there and it closed, you would have entered a trade for a pretty good risk to reward, just targeting about 10K, right? You would put your stop loss slightly below it, right over here, right? You're entering right there. You put your stop loss slightly below, perhaps these particular lines, and you would just target roughly 10K, right? Because that's where we were actually trending up to. And you would have had yourself an amazing risk to reward of 7.0. And that's actually the trade that I took to go from roughly, what was it again, 9,500 to almost $10,000. And I played myself a two Bitcoin position and I made about $1,000, maybe a little bit more. And that was a very good reward. So other ways that we find supports and resistances is actually through a channel, guys, okay? Let me give you guys a really clear example of a channel. So sometimes you guys might see a resistance like that, and sometimes you might see a support like that. But what we actually find quite often as well, let me just show you guys on a very clear screen here, is that we'll actually find support and resistances in a slope, okay? So it's actually slanting like this, just as an example, okay? So this actually happens much more than we think, where the range is actually going to be bounded by a sloped line. So channels are actually one of the most beautiful things to actually see. And if we see them, very, 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 very profitable way to trade, guys. It's probably one of my favorite things to actually see. If I actually see a channel, I usually look for like 1 point, right? 1 point that touches like that. And I look for a second point that touches, right? And as soon as this second point touches, I assume the word parallelity, if you guys have heard of that word before, right? Assume that's parallel. And then I just assume it might bounce off of there. And then if there's a third one, like that's even better because then you get a short opportunity. And sometimes it just keeps going like that as well. So sloped trend lines actually happen way more often than we think. So let me give you guys a really clear example of an uptrend where there was a channel, okay, and you guys will probably have recognized it as well. So this right here, it might be difficult to recognize at first, but once you actually develop your eye, you can actually spot it a lot better, okay? So just as an example, that's one way for us to see a channel, right? Definitely a way for us to see it as a channel, like that almost, okay? So think of it like that, right? So we see it as in the upper bounded region over here, okay? We see it for the upper bounded region, right? Where we see it 1, 2, 3. So as soon as this right here formed, right? As soon as these regions formed, we would have just automatically assumed that something like that could happen. And once you automatically assume it, oh, guys, it's very beautiful, isn't it? Okay, very beautiful, as you guys can see. Sometimes we even see a channel like this as well, right? check out that channel in here as well, right? We see it a lot better on a lower time frame, just to give you guys a really clear example. So here, you guys see this channel that's actually forming in here. Beautiful channel, right? And then you see the channel on the downtrend as well, right? Where it's hitting a lot of different regions. And because it's hitting a lot of different regions here, the moment that it breaks out, right? So let's say, guys, let's say, for example, that we see this channel. If you guys were remembering where I was calling this specific play out, right? I was definitely calling this play out. I remember playing this downtrend and calling it literally word for word. What we like to notice is that when it breaks out of the channel, this one right here, right, it's going to break the support of the channel. So when it breaks the support of a channel, you want to make note of that, right? You want to wait for it to actually come down, right? And then you want to wait for it to try to get back into the channel. And if you look actually very closely right here, you see a wick that actually rejects not only the channel, but also the 55 EMA. So that was some major rejection. And as soon as that actually formed, right, you guys can go back over here just as an example, right? You can go over here and you can say, okay, well, where's a decent support range? A decent support range would probably be this particular area, right? You always take a look at the last previous one, right? This is going to be a support range, that's going to be a support range, that's going to be a support range because it has a lot of activity and price action, right? Right around there. And also another really relevant support range was definitely down over here because other than that area, this area right there will act as a support. So what a lot of people would actually do is they would enter a short position. So you bet against the market if you remember. And that's how a lot of people make money on a downtrend as well. And then they would have made their first target right here to get an awesome risk to reward ratio of 6.8. And then you would have set your stop loss slightly higher than up here, right? So if it goes back into the channel for some reason, you take your loss. Always remember, guys, we're playing the game of probability, right? So if we play the game of probability, we don't always win every single trade. Like I mentioned in the first few lessons, right? What we try to focus on is actually winning over time. And if we win over time, that's going to make us a successful trader. So don't worry about your one single loss. I know it's really difficult to swallow and to know that, hey, I've lost. I'm going to win a lot more. I'm going to try to stay positive. But trust me, guys, that is what a stop loss is for, okay? Make sure that you guys completely understand the concept of a stop loss. Make sure that you guys are sticking to it as well, because we have to make sure we have a way to minimize our losses. Okay, we have to minimize our losses, no doubt whatsoever. And this is the way that we protect and preserve the money that we actually have already. If we do not protect and preserve our money, we're unfortunately not going to be able to grow it, right? Number one, guys, protect. Number two, preserve. Number three, then you can grow it, okay? So always make sure you stick to your stop losses, and I will say this again and 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 again until you guys understand that concept. Guys, you guys want to know what I do? Every time I'm about to take a loss, yeah, I'm human too, guys. I lose. But when I do take a loss, it's hard for me too, okay? It really is hard for me. Sometimes I take losses in the thousands, guys. Like imagine, taking a loss. To some people, it's not a lot. To me, thousands still a lot, right? So when I have to take a loss, what I do is I put my mouse over wherever the X is. I close my eyes. I close my eyes, right? And I click on my mouse, click on the X. This way I don't actually see myself take the loss. So once again, just try it, guys, okay? Right, get your mouse wherever position it is, get it ready, right? Just close your eyes and just click on that X button and just close your position, and you're gonna feel a lot better, and then you can finally breathe again. And then after that, guys, after you take your loss, what you generally need to do is walk away from the computer. Go get some fresh air, take a break, go play with your pet, go call up your significant other, take a break. Trust me, guys, the last thing you want to do after taking a loss is actually getting back into a trade, okay? No, never ever do that, guys. Never ever do that. Always walk away from the computer and take a breather. Why? Because your mental state is not prepared for another trade. Keep in mind, like I always say, that trading is a mental game. You gotta be tough emotionally, you gotta be tough mentally. The last thing you want to do after taking a loss is simply trying to rush back into another trade because you feel like, oh no, I actually have to win, right? I gotta win my money back. No, guys, no, 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 no. That is not the way to trade, okay? You gotta make sure you step away, clear that head of yours, right? It's kind of like an athlete, right? If you guys are mentally defeated and you've lost, make sure that you guys thoroughly understand that there's absolutely no way that you should get back into a trade, okay? So I just want to give you guys some general advice as well. Do you guys want to see other types of trend lines? Let me show you, okay? So if you guys notice here, right, this is starting to become a decent support, right? We're going to make note of it right here. We're going to clear all of this out, right? We're going to clear all of this out and we're going to always try to hunt, guys. Always try to hunt for channels, right? They're not as obvious as you might think. But if you actually draw it like that, okay, you can actually get a lot of channels in a lot of channels, right? There's actually a tool. So go to your line right here. There's a little right button that you click on. Go to your parallel channel line, right? Parallel channel right there. Draw your line as if you normally would, normally, right? Just normal like that. And then draw your line, then just drag it down like that. And what you'll see here is it's a fairly decent channel. There's only 2 points that touch it, right? But sometimes you're not going to get the best channels, but a lot of other times it might work out a lot better as well, right? So if you guys notice right here, okay, just as an example, always try to connect lines, guys, okay? For example, if I take the bottom there and I'm going upwards like that, okay, that could be one, just as an example, right? But it's not really the best line either, okay? So that's not really the best one either. This one, did it make a channel? Always test for channels. That's what I'm always doing, right? I'm always testing for channels. Did that make a channel? Fairly decent channel, right? Fairly decent channel here, where if you take a look on this bottom, it bounced off of here. That's definitely two lines that connected, right? It could be a little bit better, in my opinion, right? You don't want to be grasping on straws, right? But that's definitely a pretty good channel where it ended up making waves like here, for example. Okay, I'm just going to show you guys just some lines like that where it made something like that, definitely, right? And then it got to this point right there, and then it finally broke down. So guys, what a lot of people do, right, is sometimes they just short it as soon as it breaks right here, or they wait for it to bounce up, like I mentioned on the other side. It's really up to you guys, and it all depends on the candles and how they actually form, right? So here, for example, I would have entered a short position, right? You guys haven't learned Fibonacci or moving averages yet, but I would have targeted at least the 55 moving average. Okay, we're going to go over that in high detail. I would have set my stop loss slightly higher than the channel up there, and that would have been a really nice 2.76% short-term gain. Or you could have been more aggressive and you could have targeted the 200 moving average as well, right? When it breaks through here. So what we try to do as a trader is we play this game called I Spy with my little eye. And when we play this game called I Spy with my little eye, we try to hunt for these types of setups. We try to look for trade opportunities because what you guys see and what I see and what he or she sees might be very different than what everyone else sees, right? We all see opportunity differently. We all see risk differently as well. What you might be willing to risk is not what I'm willing to risk. So we always have to make sure that we try to spot these high probability setups. And this, for example, was a very high probability setup because it made a touch right there. It made a touch right there, right? And it failed to make a third touch. For example, it made a touch there, made a touch there. It failed to make a third one there. So as soon as it broke, right here from this channel, that would have been a perfect place for you guys to short the market there. Let's go to more examples of channels. So what we have to remember about channels, first of all, just to recap a little bit, okay, guys, we have to know that the channels don't always break down, right? Sometimes they actually break up. We have to remember that. But the difference between this right here, this is basically a support or resistance, right? That's horizontal, right? So if we actually look at this one right here, this is a channel that actually ended up breaking upwards, right? And that can happen all the time as well. We get a point of contact here. This is considered more like a bull trap, or sorry, a bear trap, right? Bear trap. Remember we talked about that earlier. And then we got a point of contact there, point of contact there, right? So the best thing to do, guys, honestly, if we're talking about breakouts, is this right here, right? You want to buy on the breakout. And if you want to make sure that you're actually not going to get trapped, the best thing that I always advise for people to actually do is wait for a candle wick, okay? You want a wick that rejects to the downside. A wick that rejects to the downside, and then it pushes it up because this implies that the bears attempt to push it down, but the bulls have successfully defended. So when this candle forms, because it's actually bouncing off of the channel resistance, as you guys can see, right? And what was previously a support becomes a resistance, and what was previously a resistance, it now becomes a support, right? So because it bounced off of it, it now broke this resistance, which now becomes a support, and it went upwards, okay? Now let's take a look at more channels. So if you guys actually looked at it right now, it's actually very hard to tell, right, that this is anything at all. But if you actually just keep practicing, guys, and develop that eye, start connecting points, right? You start to see things, okay? You start to see things like that, right? So this is a pretty decent channel that it's in right now. Wouldn't you guys agree with me? So the best thing to do, guys, if you're going to confirm a downtrend, and so earlier we went long, right? A lot of people, guys, where would you guys think that a support is next, okay? A support would probably be, if you guys said around here, you're right, definitely around there, okay? But of course, it actually never got there. So a really good place to target is actually the 200 moving average, right? So if you entered a short position, as soon as it broke this channel right there, you would have entered a short position because you now have confirmation of a downtrend, right? You got confirmation of a downtrend. And then you would have targeted about the 200 moving average. It's a really average place to target, or even target the 50 moving average, right? Target the 50 moving average, but because we're actually breaking well below it already, the 200 moving average, it would have been a very viable place. So this would have been an incredible risk to reward ratio. Beautiful, just beautiful risk to reward ratio right here, okay? So you guys would have been actually incredibly profitable if you guys actually took that trade. So this is actually IOTA, by the way. I didn't even mention that. So let's take a look at this beautiful channel that formed over here, okay? Just recently. Now, you guys might not recognize this as anything, but what you see is a sloped line. That's a resistance, right? That's a sloped line. That's a resistance just like that, right? You guys see it right here? Looks pretty good, right? See this massive line that's acting as a really, really hard resistance? The thing about channel supports and resistances is that the support, it tends to interact, okay? It tends to interact with a moving average. So just as an example, where do you guys see the next support, right? You see a support region, maybe right here. That's a support, right? And you also see a support right here. Because what was previously a resistance, it actually becomes a support as well, guys. So this was actually a really hard drop. It actually fell off of a cliff. Really, it fell off of a cliff, this one, right? So as soon as you break that channel support right there, you would have entered yourself into a decent short position, right? and then you would have targeted somewhere like this green box, the first one, for a 10% gain, or this green box right here for like a 17% gain. So that would have been an incredibly nice profit as well. Okay. So another thing that you can always look out for is you notice, right? And I'm just going to talk about a breakout strategy here since I have you guys here already. Okay. And the next video is actually going to cover so much more detail, guys. We're going to talk about how to play breakouts. And that's going to be an intense subject because we're going to make sure that we talk about this major thing called confirmation. Confirmation, guys. Confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. Say it 3 times with me. Confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. Say it again. Confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. You guys are going to get this drilled in your head by the time that I am done with you guys through these lessons. What is confirmation, guys? And what is no confirmation? No confirmation is a way to enter a trade based on blind luck and hoping for the best. But confirmation is a way for us to enter a trade that increases our probability of being more right than wrong. Okay? So what do you want to be? You want to be a risk taker? Or do you want to be the kind of person that believes in confirmation, confirmation, confirmation? So you guys are going to say it with me so many times. I personally am not a risky trader, believe it or not. Okay. I take a lot of risks in terms of taking more trades than I normally should. But in terms of confirmation, guys, I wait all the time until I actually get confirmation, right? Confirmation is a way for me to ensure that my investment is being protected and that my trade has a much higher chance to succeed rather than fail, okay? And we're going to be talking a lot about confirmation on a breakout. So just as an example, okay, we're going to talk about a breakout strategy. You guys notice right here, we're getting a lot of resistance, right? Lots of resistance, lots of resistance, lots of resistance right there, right? You guys would agree with me. 100% you would. There's nothing to disagree with, right? 100%. So then after, right, we break out of it, okay? After we break out of it, okay, right there, it pokes out. I wait for the next candle to see how it's forming almost midway. And after I wait, if I finally believe that there's enough confirmation that it's going to go on an uptrend, then I enter the trade. But if you were to enter the trade well before it broke out of that resistance right there, you're now just basically hoping for the best, okay? So trend lines act as a barrier. So think of a resistance as a ceiling, right? Where everybody's trying to pound at it. They're trying to pound at it. They're trying to break it. They're trying to break it. Sometimes it breaks a little bit, right? Sometimes it breaks a little bit, but not everybody squeezes through because the ceiling is too heavy and the ceiling starts to collapse again. So imagine getting trapped that way, okay? Think of it like that. But then sometimes, right, people they want to smash through it. They want to smash through it. They want to smash through it. And it breaks out really hard. So then if you actually get through this resistance and it breaks, people tend to rally. And a rally means where everybody gets together, right? There's a big group effort to actually push the price well above this trend line resistance. So whenever we get something like that, it's a really good idea to purchase on a breakout, right? So that's what we're going to be covering a lot in the next video as well. Here is a really good example on Bitcoin Cash of something called a throw over, okay? It's also known as a bull trap most of the time, right? So what a throw over basically is when a coin, it throws itself over a resistance, and then once it does that, it actually just falls down just as hard as it went up, okay? So if we draw this trend line resistance right here, check it out, okay? This is a trend line resistance, as you guys can see. I love trend lines and resistances so much. It helps us to get targets. So if you were to enter a position as soon as it broke right here, so this is the next right here, right? You guys see these points that are resistance, 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 right? So as soon as it broke, this particular point, you might have wanted to enter into a position and you would have targeted right there, just as an example, you would have had yourself a really good risk to reward setup like that. Target the top of it, put your stop loss slightly below. Always remember that a stop loss, guys, is a way for you to minimize your losses. And you have to make sure that you guys are sticking to them. Otherwise, the last thing you want to do, guys, is turn your small loss into a catastrophic one. And if you turn into a catastrophic one, it's going to be disastrous. So knowing how to cut your losses is really important. Just remember my tip. Close your eyes, click on that X button. Take a breath or take a deep breath, walk away from the computer for a little bit, then come back to trade when you're actually more refreshed and clear minded. So you would have actually made yourself a nice 11% gain there. So this throw over, what you always want to do after, right? After it breaks is, wait for it to break, then wait for it again perhaps, and just honestly wait, guys. Wait for one more candle always for confirmation, confirmation, confirmation. Because if you actually ended up playing on a 2-hour chart or even a 3-hour chart, you would have seen that it's a pretty nasty candle that got rejected, right? So it went over to the top and it simply just threw itself down. And let's see if we can actually form a resistance like this. Pretty much, right? This actually almost formed us a resistance like that. Actually, pretty much made a channel, right? This one made a channel pretty much right down over here. And as soon as, if you guys notice, it actually intersects right there with the 55 EMA. So there's tons of these types of examples that I'm going to keep giving you guys. I'm going to wrap up this lesson number 10, which wraps up what is a resistance, what is a support, what is a trend line? Just remember that a resistance is a ceiling and a support is actually the floor. Okay, just make sure you guys understand that once a resistance is broken, there's always another resistance point somewhere higher than it, right? Unless it actually broke the all-time high. And then once it breaks a support, there's always another support lower than it somewhere. And we're going to learn how to identify these a lot more in more detail in the next upcoming few videos that I have planned for you guys, especially on the breakout strategy there. So I want to thank you guys for joining me for lesson number 10, where we covered trend lines, covered resistances, covered channels, and we also covered trend lines as well. So make sure you guys are always studying every single day, okay? You guys don't get good at trading unless you're actually putting in the time, putting in the effort, and making sure that you guys clearly understand the basic concepts, okay? I can easily show you guys the ropes and you guys can grab onto it, but it's up to you guys if you want to hang on to it and actually practice and add more work to it. So make sure you guys are always diligently working, right? Study every single day, study every single night, and that's how you become better as a trader. And especially make sure that you guys understand that losing is a very vital part of the game, and the lessons you learn from losing is actually a lot more than the lessons that you learn from winning. If you keep winning all the time, how do you improve as a trader if you just keep winning? You have to lose sometimes to become a better trader. So this wraps up lesson number 10. I really appreciate you guys joining me for this video. And for lesson 11, what we're going to be talking about are breakouts, okay? We're going to be talking about what are some common patterns as well, and we're going to be talking about playing breakouts. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about things like what is a symmetric triangle, what is an ascending or descending triangle, right? What is a flag pattern, what is a cup and handle, what is a head and shoulders pattern as well. So I really appreciate you guys joining me for this particular lesson. I hope that you guys have taken tons away from this, because I always take a lot away from this as well while showing you guys how to learn the basics and show you guys the ropes. So I really look forward to seeing you guys for lesson 11, and thank you very much once again for joining me, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Thank you, baby whales. I'll see you very soon. Bye now.